Well, good morning, everyone. Scott Hamilton. Welcome to our E&P Leadership VX series, virtual experience series. I see people are coming on board here, so we're going to take just a couple of minutes as people are logging on to walk through our session today. Let's just start with this. I want to just kind of give you just a little bit of background here about who we are. Again, my name is Scott Hamilton. I'm CEO of the Executive Next Practices Institute, based here at University of California, Irvine, Beal Applied Innovation. Today's session, we're delighted to have our partner and supporter, Dale Carnegie, with us, Steve Verberg, who heads up the Orange County division of Dale Carnegie. During the course of today's highly interactive session, we're going to be asking Steve a few questions, and then we've got the results of their agility survey that they just finished this past year. So I know you're going to be wanting to see the results of that report. But during this session, you've got a couple of features on Zoom. I think most of you are familiar with Zoom by now, or should be after the past several weeks. Two things: you've got a chat feature and you've got a Q&A function. Feel free to use either one. You can chat with us privately, or just do a question during the course of the presentation. And we'll look forward to addressing all of your questions during the course of this event. A little bit more about Executive Next Practice Institute. I see quite a few people on the line with us. We see people from both domestically across the country, as well as Europe, Canada, Mexico, and of course, our membership from Southern California. This is what we look like. We've had over 60,000 people attend our in-person and online events over the years, 390 plus sessions. And the whole premise has been to look at first look at emerging trends. And that's certainly true today with our dialogue with Steve, in looking what's emerging in terms of agility and how it helps organizations. Our membership is key C-suite leaders, CEOs, CMOs, CFOs, top HR, and it's all industry sectors and all functions by design, because particularly in today's world with COVID-19, your next idea or your next opportunity is most likely going to come from outside your industry, not from within it. So again, we mix people deliberately to come up with these next practice ideas. This is what it looked like a couple of months ago, Steve. Back in the days of non-social distancing, we will return to this. Eventually, we'll get into a formula where we can all meet together safely, but also do live streaming. So we're looking forward to that day soon. Again, this is where you come for your visibility in connection with C-suite leaders, relevant information you can use today, very high quality content, so that you can proactively address the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and beyond. So again, we want to thank Dale Carnegie, who's been a terrific partner here, and we look forward to not only this session, but multiple sessions with them, particularly a stakeholder event where we're going to have Steve speak at that on November the 5th. That's a major summit on stakeholder trends. Again, mark your calendars. That's November the 5th. We're hoping that'll be both in person and live streamed. All right. Also, just a couple of updates. Next Tuesday, our interview in the evening with Margie Worrell. She's going to talk about the empathetic leadership and compassionate leadership in today's crisis and why that's so critical, followed by our digital first, cloud first session on digital transformation. That's next Thursday at the same time as this one, 11 a.m. And then two other ones I want to mention here quickly. On the 19th is a repeat of our Path to the Next Normal with Liz Pellet, who's a fellow with Johns Hopkins. This was an extremely popular session, so we're repeating that on the 19th. And then the Science of Executive Decision Making with our friends, Dr. Ken Brosso and Armand Bajad out of Texas A&M. All right, let's do this. I want to just quickly tell you one other thing about the links you can go to. You can join our next sessions at this link here, E&P Institute events. That is changed daily. So we're updating events constantly, and these are national, local, regional, international events. We have a YouTube channel. Please subscribe to it. It's ENP TV. This session is being recorded, and you'll see this on the site next week. And then finally, join as an annual member. Membership covers virtual and live events all the way through 2021. All right, where are we? We had a great discussion from some of our members this past week. We got input from Gallup, our friends over there, Larry Niemund, and they talked about this, where are we at today with mid to large cap companies. And many are going through a cultural transformation right now by necessity, seeing more remote workers, and they anticipate that to continue. Secondly, all of them are updating their strategy. They're looking at new scenarios for the next couple of years, even further out than that, based on what they're seeing in the marketplace. So they're all taking a step back and updating their strategies. But most importantly, they are concerned about maintaining their agility in the marketplace, because we have to be nimble in today's marketplace. New competitors emerging, new business opportunities actually, and certainly more diligence is needed in terms of how we move forward. But this idea of maintaining an agile organization has never been more important. And that's why today's conversation is so critical. Steve, like I mentioned, is the co-owner of Dale Carnegie, Orange County. He's really a specialist here in helping organizations plan and implement programs that will guide teams to profitability, increase profitability, production, and performance. Steve is not only the co-owner, he's also an author, speaker, consultant, coach, and corporate trainer. Please welcome Steve. Steve, I'm going to stop the share here, and we'll have a conversation to start with. Welcome. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well, Steve, let's get right into this. We've got a couple of things to do. We want to ask you some questions, and our audience has some questions. But also, I know you've got the results of your survey, your report that came out recently, and I know we want to share that with the audience. It's a really, really interesting implications for what we're all going through. But what would you say at this point is the most critical factor for organizations to be agile in today's market? What's the most critical factor at this point?
Well, it's interesting you were just talking about culture, because I would say organizational culture is the most critical factor. When you talk about agility, it started in the tech sector as a way to roll out software applications to users quickly, get feedback on the software scope, and then quickly pivot the direction of how to develop that functionality of the product. But in today's sense, it's a much broader term in general business to really focus on how an organization can gather and act on information, make decisions quickly, and implement change in a rapidly evolving environment. So you're talking about right now in a world where everything has changed in the last 2 months. It's pretty critical that we have that type of culture that is agile. And so if you go back to Carol Dweck, who did research on the fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, a lot of organizations had that fixed mindset where failure was bad. People were afraid to voice their opinions because they would look bad and there would be maybe some repercussions to that. Whereas today, it's very important to have that growth mindset that, intelligent risks are good, present your ideas, because that creates a more agile environment where we can then pivot quickly. We can take all this information in from our people, who are our most valuable assets, and then implement those in a quick fashion. So the culture of an organization is really the most critical component when you talk about an agile organization.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? And even more critical now in today's virtual environment. We won't be 100% virtual forever, but again, really critical. But what do you think, what are the barriers? When we talk about agility, what are the barriers we have and have had even before this crisis?
Well, and the barriers then go back to that, organizations that operate in a more siloed manner, where maybe they're their goals or their bonuses are not tied to an overarching purpose, an organizational purpose. So then you get competing functional metrics, from one department to the next. And therefore, people aren't working in harmony to create that agile environment. An example would be an organization that I was working with that, the CMO at the organization had one of her bonuses tied to the rollout of their organizational website. And she was going to make sure that that organizational website rolled out on time no matter what. And it happened to be at the expense of the user experience, because to her, her metrics were tied to getting it out on time, regardless of the user experience, while the organization as a whole then suffered because of that early rollout instead of waiting till it was fully developed. So really, a big barrier to agility is making sure that everything's in alignment to an overall purpose, so that the organization acts as one in harmony to achieve that purpose.
Yeah, it's interesting. You touched on something too, and with that example about a leader probably not being aware of the culture and aware of what their people are doing. What are some of the key social intelligence, emotional intelligence, social intelligence skills really support agility in the organization at this point?
So the key things that we found is that leaders really have to focus on building trusting and positive, strong relationships. It's really going to be key coming out of this pandemic, because people don't trust maybe the organizations as much as they did if they were immediately laid off. Maybe their loyalty has been taken down a notch. Maybe they're still operating in a little bit of fear of the whole, gathering of people in a workplace. So, building trusting relationships and positive, strong relationships is definitely a key factor in social intelligence. And, years ago, HR used to tell us, don't have relationships with your employees. They would discourage you to have personal relationships. Today, employees demand it. It's one of the key pillars to engaging your team is making sure that they know you're a real person and you care about them as a real person as well.
Yeah, that's so true. And we take it to the employee level in terms of the skill sets that employees need to have to work within an agile organization. Now, what are those core skills that they really have to be effective now?
So the core skills really that we talk about a lot are the social intelligence one, which we just touched on. Two would be open communication, right? Communication is extremely important, especially from a leadership standpoint. Are you communicating the need for change, giving them the why with the what? Are you skilled at managing the responses that you're getting from the individual employees as you're giving them that need for change? So at Dale Carnegie, we have a formula. It's called EC plus BC equals PC. So it's emotional change plus behavior change equals performance change, right? Right. So now coming out of this pandemic, there's going to be a lot of new regulations that are going to be imposed on industries. There's going to be a lot of shifts of what we will be doing. And so you really have to make sure that people are emotionally bought into the reason why the change is happening and what we're doing, so that we can get that end result, which is the performance change. And I guess the third skill that's really going to become critical is resilience, right? Yeah. Change management, resilience. How do we operate in a world where maybe we're getting change saturation? We got so much change coming at us at once that we don't even know if we can handle it. So as leaders, we not only need to be able to take in that change and move forward ourselves, but we also have to help our teams to manage through that change.
Yeah, that's, and again, those are skills that really have to be developed and nurtured, don't they? What have you seen in terms of how an organization determines if this is a key initiative? I think it answers itself, but what have you seen in terms of organizations identifying it, say, as a strategic initiative or one of their priorities?
Well, I would probably, dare to say that it should be a priority for most organizations. But we all know we have limited time, resources, and attention that we can focus on any one initiative. So really stepping back and asking yourselves, what are the key things that are happening within our industry or within our organization that are requiring us to develop that agility? If it becomes one of those things where we say this should be a priority, then really assess your agility readiness, right? Take a step back, observe your organization, examine it, ask your people questions, and really listen to their answers. So really determine, are we ready as an organization to become agile? There was a study done by McKinsey Research that said only about 4% of organizations have implemented company-wide agile transformation, and about 37% of organizations are in progress to developing that agility organizational-wide. So it's not for everybody, but it definitely is going to be a competitive advantage in the future if you can make that transformation.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? And particularly with a dispersed workforce, if you're looking at a world where a greater preponderance of people are doing virtual work, doing remote work, and we think that's going to be the case, or at least part of the time they will be, this ability to tap that agility skill, to build those skills, is going to be even more crucial as we move forward. Because again, the competition out there is going to be moving just as fast. We're still going to see the disruption across industries. So we have to be aware and ready for that. What else, Steve, can leaders do specifically to develop agility in this time of crisis and beyond?
As a leader, leaders really need to build their building blocks of agility competence. And those are making sure you have the tools and processes in place to become a more agile organization. Do we have a culture of social intelligence where people can openly, honestly voice their opinions? Do we have a resilience within ourselves as leaders so that we can manage through that change? How do I shift the culture in my individual team to make that happen? And then to pull it all together, do we have a capacity to act? Can we work together as an organization to make things happen instead of, as we said before, the siloed organizations which have the most obstacles to get over?
Yeah, that's an interesting comment too, because the way you structure this in terms of developing the skills is equally important, isn't it? In terms of making sure you're doing that, to your point, across silos, across functional areas. And there's a tendency in the virtual world to become extremely siloed. So we're going to have to watch that, but also, again, develop those skills where we're reaching out and moving across the functions, looking also at the customer from that standpoint, making sure we've got the temperature of the customer on a very immediate basis so we can react or proact to what's going on in the marketplace. I know you did this study, and so I'd like you to share the study, but also talk about what Dale Carnegie is offering to the marketplace, because I know you've been doing some terrific programs yourself over the past few months, but maybe we start with this survey that you did and as a context for this.
Sure. Let me just go ahead and share.
Sure.
All right. So if we look at the study, about every 2 years, Dale Carnegie does an additional global study. And so in 2019, we did a web-based survey, over 3,500 respondents from the C-suite all the way down to the individual contributors across 11 different countries and a range of industries. So what we're going to look at is a snapshot of what that survey actually looked like. And so to start, we'll define what we see as agility, and that's an organization's ability to gather and act upon information, make decisions quickly, and implement change to meet rapidly evolving requirements of customers and the business environment. And as you know, things are changing rapidly with this COVID environment. So why is it especially important now? We got market disruptors, and that's going to be new regulations, changing regulations. We always have investor expectations. They want more for their investment. Competition for talent is going to be interesting because as we come out of this COVID environment, people got a taste of what it's like to work remotely. So there's going to be changing expectations as we go after talent for flexible work hours, for remote work options, and so forth. And then, of course, we have new technology like artificial intelligence that has been implemented in many places and will continue to become more and more important. And then, of course, the customer expectations and the data that's making insights more available. So what we see from the survey is that there are specific building blocks to agility. The first is a overarching organizational purpose that is customer centered. The second would be then the tools and processes, followed by social intelligence, resilience, that all feed into your capacity to act as an organization. And that would create the agile organization. We'll get into each of these a little bit. So why does agility require a clear purpose? Excuse me. So agility is really kind of your true north. It establishes the why for the what. It also empowers employees to be advocates for change, right? So it provides the reason for change to fulfill the purpose and fully meet customers' needs. This empowers engaged employees to suggest and advocate changes for the organization. It facilitates collaboration across silos. As I said before, one of the biggest barriers is a siloed organization. So if you have a clear purpose that will guide actions for the individual departments, it can help break down those silos. But even when there are conflicting priorities, it provides a framework for making trade-offs. So it helps us to look at the bigger picture, and then it also allows the individual contributors to see their value of what they're doing. So a clear purpose is the first step in building an agile organization. The next thing that came out of the study was the need for tools and processes. And so agile organizations need tools and processes to help them capture quality data and facilitate interactions that can lead to co-creation of value and removal of barriers to productively innovate. So when you talk about that, big data can come from customer satisfaction, website engagements, web analytics, employee pulse surveys, your CRMs. It can come from all different places. So if we take an example of Lego, so Lego has always been a toy company at the forefront of innovation. One of their greatest resources for innovation is their customers. So they have an online application where customers can submit their own ideas, and if they get over 10,000 votes, Then it goes to Lego and they vote on whether to make it an actual product or not. And the organization then will let the creator of that idea approve the final product. They earn a percentage of the sales. They're recognized as the creator on all packaging and marketing. So there's a lot of value to that. So they're really looking at customers as a valuable asset to their organization, and they have the processes and tools in place to make that happen. So that's another piece of a agile organization, is really making sure you have the tools and processes. The next piece is that social intelligence piece. And with social intelligence, you're talking about the ability to deal with challenging social contexts effectively, understand others' concerns, feelings, and emotional states, and knowing what to say, when to say it, how to say it in order to build and maintain positive relationships with others. And so as we look at Dale Carnegie's history, that's one of the things that we've really been founded on, is that social intelligence. How do we make that happen? So you'll notice on the screen here, I do have a link on the bottom. That's if you want a free copy of Dale Carnegie's Golden Book. And what it has in there is 3 sets of principles. The first set is your enhanced relationship principle. And what we need to know from a social intelligence standpoint, if people don't trust and like their leaders, they're going to be indifferent to what they're asking them to do. So we need to really focus on building rapport with our people. Once we do that, then we can get to the next level, which is to gain that cooperation, that willing cooperation to influence their actions. And if we didn't do a good job at enhancing the relationships in the first section and they were indifferent to us, then they might comply. But we know that there's a different level of productivity when people are just complying to what you say versus actively cooperating. Then we can move to the highest level once we've gained their willing cooperation, and we can actually lead them. We can be a leader, and we'll eliminate the resistance we'll get from those that are just complying. So it builds on itself in every aspect. So there's 3 different levels of leadership that you need to do within an agile organization. You need to build those relationships, gain that willing cooperation, and then you can really be a more effective leader.
Steve, is it safe to say that on the pyramid here, we're with the current environment with COVID-19 and the potential rebounding economy, are we having to take a step back here to go at the lowest rung to really reinforce and enhance the relationships we have? Are you seeing companies do that? Kind of taking a step back?
I think for a lot of leaders, they're going to have to, as an organizational, as a whole for the organization, you may have to. The key would be, what was our relationship going into this, right? If we had a good, strong relationship going into this, then we're probably not going to have to step back as far. If we just had a, for lack of a better term, we had a command and control relationship, right? One of those more traditional managerial styles, then we're really going to have to step back and focus on the relationship. Yeah, because as we mentioned before, trust may have been affected by this whole COVID thing, with a lot of the layoffs and furloughs that were done immediately. I've talked to several people who were in executive leadership positions that were laid off and did not expect to be laid off. And they were, their trust is definitely shot for the company. So there is going to have to be a step back and rebuilding of relationships. Yep. Yeah. So then after that, one of the I guess the parallel studies that was done by Google on social intelligence is what they call their Project Oxygen. They started in 2008 to look at really what are the behaviors of effective leaders, the most effective leaders. And they came up with 8 of those excuse me, 8 behaviors. And in 2018, they updated the study and added 2 more, number 9 and 10 there, and updated their research. But basically what they found is that when you have an effective leader that exhibits all of these behaviors here, it creates an atmosphere of social intelligence that makes a more effective team, right? That people can work together more effectively, and they actually implement this across Google, and they have seen a rise in productivity because of it. Number 3 and 6 were the ones that were updated, and 9 and 10 were the ones that were added with the 2018 research. So then after social intelligence, we can look at resilience, and resilience is really more about change management, right? How do we manage through change? How do we bounce back from adverse experiences? Do we have a positive attitude and confidence that supports a mindset that's open to information? So that's really what we're talking about when we look at resilience. And so as we look at another McKinsey study, they say that up to 375 million worldwide will need to change their occupation or learn new skills just because of the onset of AI, artificial intelligence in the workplace. And that's not to mention the COVID requirements that are going to be slapped on top of that. So what they're looking at is, you know, people are going to have to shift from maybe traditional job descriptions to more project-based work, from operational to insight-driven, from mono-skilled or single-skilled to now being multi-skilled, able to do and wear multiple hats. So people are going to have to be more resilient and change. So what type of skills do you believe will be most likely needed in the future to avoid job loss? Most of it comes to the soft skills instead of the hard engineering skills. So I'll give you an example. If you talk about the banking industry, we can have an artificial intelligence application that can actually determine who the most at-risk businesses are for bankruptcy, right? Or the most at-risk individuals for bankruptcy. But we don't want a computer calling them and basically telling them that. We want to get one of our people on the phone to work with them to work through those challenges so that they don't become bankrupt. So give them options. So we need those soft skills, those people skills of somebody that's able to talk to them, to work with them, to get through that challenge. Which soft skills are most important? So from the 2019 survey, we asked executives which soft skill did they think would be most important. You can see in the darker color there that they've received training in the past 3 years on it. The lighter training is which skill they think is most important. Communication skills, most important. Creativity coming in second, critical thinking third, and leadership skills fourth. So definitely going to be a challenge for a lot of organizations that aren't used to open communication and leading by example. Now, all of that together feeds into the capacity to act for an organization. So capacity to act refers to the organization's ability to change in response to new information and do it quickly. Enhancing an organization's capacity for action involves supporting the creativity and collaboration that drives innovation and effectively during continuous change. So capacity to act. When we looked at the survey results, we asked the question, does your organization have the capacity to act in response to new information? You can see in the Americas, only 36% of organizations surveyed felt like their organization had the capacity to act in response to new information. Overall, globally, only 30% out of all the countries. So we're in a little bit of a little bit of trouble here, as we know that all organizations are going to have to act as we come out of this pandemic. One of the big challenges is encouraging collaboration, information sharing, and team effectiveness. So you can see from the survey results, 42% of US respondents strongly agree that people are open to and share new information that may influence how we do our work. So in other words, 58% are not used to open information sharing. So some challenges there. Another Google study, this one was Project Aristotle on team effectiveness. So you can see the top one there says psychological safety. And I think that's going to be one of the critical challenges coming out of this is, do people feel that they are psychologically safe? Excuse me. In other words, if I voice my opinion, am I going to be looked down upon? If I make a mistake, is it going to be held against me? So we'll have to get over that. We'll have to develop that trust so that people really understand that it is a safe and agile environment where they can be part of the team and they can clearly help make it an agile organization. So those are the key building blocks, a snapshot, if you will, of the survey results. Mr. Carnegie always said, keep your mind open to change all the time. Welcome it, court it. It's only by examining and re-examining your opinions and ideas that you can progress. So that's kind of an overarching theme of all of our training that we do. We do focus on developing that social intelligence, that environment that promotes it, the change management, the communication.
No, that's great information, Steve. Again, it's very timely in terms of how you're talking about that, the capacity to act in particular, in terms of what the challenges are from that standpoint. And we talked about this idea of the remote environment. Just adds a whole layer of complexity to it, because you don't have these casual collisions of ideas, and certainly psychological safety. If you're on a Zoom call, you're presenting an idea to 30 people, it's difficult to read all 30 faces to see if that's being accepted or not. So it's tough to put yourself out there. Dale Carnegie has been around for a long, long time, and it's always been timely information. How is your organization shifting, adapting, pivoting in this marketplace?
Well, the fortunate part for us is that we've all, for the last 10 years, we've offered what we call live online training. So as a training organization, our face-to-face and classroom products that we've offered have been shifted to the live online environment. We use WebEx training, which allows us to use whiteboards and breakout sessions and all the normal things. So really what we're finding is we're trying to maybe re-educate some of the people that were hesitant to use remote applications because they didn't feel it was effective. I'm always the advocate for face-to-face. I prefer face-to-face, but for example, I was coaching 2 salespeople on a Zoom call, and their whole business revolved around helping physicians move to a remote diagnosis system. So people are being forced to move to that remote environment. And so as an organization, we've just halted all of our live classroom coaching and programs and moved it to an online environment to meet the current government regulations, if you will.
Yeah, it's interesting. And when you bring up the healthcare space in particular, that's going to be one of those that's evolving even faster. We've got some examples from the past, though. We go back 15 years ago, even 20 years ago, radiologists were the first to go to telemedicine, right? I know many of them. However, as an organization, part of their associations realized that they still had to bring them together from time to time because they were missing some things in terms of independent thought, innovative ideas, of not being able to freely share what they were learning on the job. So again, yeah, it's going to be a mix, isn't it? It's going to be an interesting dynamic here as we move forward. The other thing, Steve, we had you originally on our top expert panel, as you recall, for our stakeholder summit, and that's been moved to November 5th. Mm-hmm. Again, you mentioned that one of the key stakeholders, of course, is the customer. What are you recommending to your clients now in terms of sensitizing teams to that customer as it relates to being agile?
So from a customer standpoint, we really have to be sensitive to what they're going through. The organizations that I talk to a lot are really, when they talk about how to approach their customers, they're taking a standpoint of emphasize, listen, and offer, right? Empathize with what your customers are going through right now. Anybody that just calls up customers and says, you want to buy, you want to buy, you want to buy, is actually wrecking their relationship or ruining their relationship with them, right? So customers need to be supported right now. You really have to take the time to listen to them and then offer them solutions that will address the challenges they're dealing with. You know, there are a lot of industries right now that are actually flourishing during this time. You know, the healthcare industry being one of them, they're seeing an increased demand in some respects. The manufacturers of those healthcare products are seeing an increased demand. You know, a lot of the not the restaurants, but the grocery stores are inundated. I have a colleague, a friend that I know that is an executive at a wine and spirits organization who said basically their sales are up 300% within the supermarkets. So there are a lot of organizations that are flourishing, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that are suffering and a lot of organizations that are being really challenged right now with the current environment. So really being empathetic is probably the key that people need to focus on during this time with their customers.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you one. I'm going to roll up a couple of questions we had that came in through the chat room through our viewers, and we'll kind of close with this. But as we're in this next 30 to 45 days where we're starting to open back up again. And as I mentioned on our second bullet point, people are getting together and doing their strategic plans and trying to develop scenarios. How would one of our viewers position agility as a strategic initiative? How would you frame it with your executive team? Would it just be straight, flat out say, hey, we need agility, or what? How would you best frame that as a strategic initiative moving forward?
Sure. I think that really what needs to happen is people need to look at how they responded to this stay-at-home order that was implemented, you know, a month and a half ago, and demonstrate on this is how we responded. Had we been a more agile organization, this could have been the results. Therefore, logically, I think we need to look at this initiative as something to prepare us for the next time, because more than likely, this is not going to be the only time this happened. It's unfortunate, but when a virus hits the population, it doesn't go away. It just continues to evolve. If you take the flu, every year the flu comes back, right? So are we ready for the next time we have a pandemic? Let's implement an agile organizational culture so that we are. So that's maybe one of the ways that you could position it as a reason to make it a strategic initiative.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's going to be around in some shape or form. And we know over the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to be difficult. One quick note for our viewers. We were on a call with several hundred CEOs yesterday, and they were asked to think about when they expect a return to full normal, and the consensus was 2022. So, we're going to have to be at this and really watching what's happening very closely. So, Steve, your advice has been terrific today. Again, for our viewers, this is going to go up on the ENP TV website in a couple of days. Our team will also send you a follow-up email with Steve's contact information. I encourage you to reach out to Steve and his team right away in terms of as you're forming your strategic plans now. This is a critical point. But Steve, again, thanks for your time today. It's been terrific seeing you, although I look forward to seeing you in person sooner than later at our stakeholder summit.
Thank you, Scott.
Really appreciate it. So again, this is Steve, and again, you'll be getting his contact information in our follow-up email. And again, we look forward to seeing you on May 12th. That's May 12th for our interview with Maggie Worrell at 6 p.m. PST. And on May 14th is our digital summit. That is the Digital Transformation Summit, May 14th. You can find all the information here on these links. I'm going to leave the link up, and Steve and I are going to exit right. We'll see you all next week. Thanks again. Thanks, Steve.
Bye.